Hi, everybody. It's Mike from Here the Watchman. I'm really excited today to be coming at you. I have one of my truly dear friends joining us today. He comes to us all the way from the other side of the northern border, up in the land of that kid that thinks he's the prime minister. It's Mr. Carl TEICHRIB. Carl, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely, Mike. I love the introduction. Spot on.
Carl is an amazing researcher. He's an author. He is a veteran of several Burning Man gatherings where he sets up a camp to actually talk to people about Christianity and the Bible and give them a little different perspective. My hat really goes off to him for that. He has written a book. It's a teeny book. You can see right there. Look at that. I mean, you could read through that like, on an Uber ride somewhere. The book is titled Game of Gods. It is phenomenal. I mean, you need this book. And what you need to do is you can just go to Amazon.com, I believe, and just search Game of Gods, Carl TEICHRIB, TEICHRIB. And get on board. Now, folks, a big announcement today from Here the Watchman. The Long Island, New York Intensive Spiritual Warfare Workshop with Russ Dizdar is pretty much sold out. However, today we put on our website, you can pre-order the DVDs of this conference. So go to our website, hearthewatchmenmen.com, order the DVD set. We will have on-demand viewing up there shortly. We don't want you to miss out on this. This is not a conference. This is an intensive teaching session about how to deal with the demonic. What Carl and I are going to talk about today is kind of exciting. And what we're going to talk about is transhumanism. The word gets thrown around like it's like some new menu item at Burger King. I mean, there are people, you look at like Steve Quayle is an expert on transhumanism. His whole website, he's almost built a career on transhumanism. But what really is it, and why are we looking at it? Carl, can you answer us the question of, first of all, what is transhumanism? And second of all, why, as the remnant body of Christ, do we care?
Two really good questions, Mike. Fantastic questions. First, transhumanism in a nutshell is the idea that through our science and our technology, we can grab a hold of evolution and we can reshape it to fit our image. So we redesign ourselves through science and technology. It does take an evolutionary approach. It takes the perspective that it is through technique. It is through planning, it is through the works of our hands, and we can perfect ourselves, we can upgrade ourselves, we can become more than human, we can blast through the barriers of sin, not sin, pardon me, that's Christian. We can blast through the barriers of death and mortality, and we can blast through the barriers of our own limitations. Not so much the issue of sin, though. That's not really the point. The point is becoming more than what we really are already. It's interesting because it takes us from being human, and this is really important. It's a key piece, from being human to becoming something else. And that's what transhumanism ultimately is about, becoming something else, perfecting ourselves through the works of our hands. And there's a lot, Mike, there's so many different technologies out there pointing to the idea that we can become something more. We can transform into something else. Everything from brain-computer interfacing to advanced genome editing, the technologies and the gadgetry is incredible everywhere. And it's not that we as Christians are opposed to technology. I mean, you and I are using it right now to be able to communicate. But what it is about, ultimately, is about becoming something more than being human. What's important for Christians to understand is technology is valuable in terms of restoration. You're wearing eyeglasses. I got to wear eyeglasses to read my book. This is a restorative technology. What we're talking about, though, in transhumanism goes beyond this to transformative technology,
Now, Carl,
becoming
are
more
we?
than man.
Is this where we get into all this dialogue about the mark of the beast, the Illuminati, DNA, modification, and is that where this all is that under this umbrella?
You know, some people might take it that way. I try not to. For myself, I mean, you know, and you raise a really good point with asking that question. There's so many things you could attach to this if you so chose to do so. I try to stick with the worldview angle. I try to stick with, okay, not even what is the latest gadgetry, because that's always changing. The technology, I can't keep up with the technology. You can't keep up with the technology. It's out of this world already. Uh, but really, I try to stay with what is the worldview? What is it preaching to us? What is it telling us? What is it enticing us to be? That's for me more interest than, let's say, the bloodline issue or even the supernatural demonic aspect, the angelic aspect. I know all kinds of other guys have jumped into different things, and I've actually stayed out of some of those conversations because I really wanted to boil it down to what is the worldview being presented and what is it that transhumanism is offering us. And it is offering us this elixir, this technology, this new fruit, this fruit that says you can become more than man. You can become, actually, you can become as gods. And that, when you strip it all away, and you don't, Mike, you don't even have to strip it far. And that's what you run into over and over again. All of a sudden, you run into God talk. There's a lot of God talk in the transhumanist community, a lot. And that really goes back to your second question. Why should we be concerned? Because really what this is an alternative form of redemption, an alternative form of salvation, and it looks to recreate Eden and get us back into the garden where we take command and we take control. We rise ourselves up and we say, hey, we can create ourselves to be the gods of our own image.
Well, that's a Carl. I mean, now that's a dangerous prospect right there. I mean, and
It is.
I sense though that there is really a movement out there amongst the, let's call them transhumanists, to push this agenda forward. Are you seeing that in your research?
Yeah, you know, I've been to different transhumanist events. I haven't been to one for a while. Ironically, when you talked about the beginning of our conversation about Burning Man, last year when I attended Burning Man, the theme for that year's event, 2018, was I, Robot, going back to Isaac Asimov, asking the big question, how far can man and machine integrate? What does man and machine's relationship look like? These were the questions being asked by the art, being asked in the workshops, being asked by the theme itself. And so it had a transhumanist type of motif or a theme to it. But in years past, Mike, I went to the Global Future 2045 Congress back in 2013. That was like one of the most audacious transhumanist events I attended. What was interesting with that particular conference was it reached out to the United Nations and it admitted, look, we in the transhumanist community, we see that there needs to be some type of global management system. This can't just happen in a haphazard format. This can't just be cobbled together. There needs to be some governing body at the global level that will take transhumanism, put it under its umbrella, shape it, form it, and then bring it out for mankind. So a letter was drafted and sent to the United Nations through the organizers of that event, which was to me very telling because I was looking at that going, okay, this is potentially more than just technology. This is potentially more than just a worldview, more than just an ideology. This could have political aspects too. And in fact, in your country, you have a transhumanist political party. So there's really interesting correlations that are taking shape around this idea because the technology is incredible. I mean, we are living in a very different world than what you and I grew up in, that's for sure.
Well, Carl, I mean, you and I are just a couple of years past being called a millennial. Uh, maybe I should say, maybe I should have said a couple of decades. But when you mention like our relationship with machines and technology. When you and I grew up, our relationship with a machine was there's the tractor. It runs if I put gas and oil in it. If something breaks on it, I get my tool thing out. I go over to it. I change the belt. I put a new gasket here. I do something like that. Same thing with cars. Cars, when you and I grew up, didn't talk to you. They didn't have cameras in them. None of that stuff. But today's a different world. Now, do you see us evolving faster and faster now as things are how do I want to say this? Is the snowball going downhill?
The snowball is going downhill in many ways, but I don't think from an evolutionary point of view. Number one, I don't believe that we live in an era where there's macro evolution, where we can change from species to species. I'm actually not so concerned about the fact that we will change. I'm more concerned about how do I say this? I'm more concerned about how we try to change society around the ideals of transhumanism. In other words, man will remain man. Man will remain man. And the sin nature will remain. We still have that. We still have that in play. We can't develop a technological future where we take that out. We don't take out human nature. But we are going a long ways in terms of integrating our own personal lives in such a way with technology that there's no escape. We're all carrying around smartphones in our pocket. We're all technologically integrated. I was speaking at a conference, this is a while ago, where I had a lady, she must have been in her 80s, and she came up to me and she got it. And she's like, I don't have a smartphone. I don't have a personal computer. But she says, I know my bank records are all online with my bank. I know that everything about my life is integrated somewhere, somehow. She got it. She understood. So it's not the same anymore, is it? Yet at the same time, human nature remains. And so when you take fallible human nature and you add into it unbridled technology in a way, man, we can go down some pretty dangerous roads, especially when you militarize it or use it as a system of control. What's fascinating too, Mike, is there is a recognition that there is a spiritual aspect to it. I'm going to just read you. Notice I put on my technology. Let me just read you just a little excerpt. This is going back to the 1990s at the Esalen Institute, which in California.
Oh yeah,
Esalen is a major outfit that helped bring the East to the West. And in their one of their workshops in the 1990s was entitled "The Machine Dreams and Techno-Shamanism," and I've quote this here in my book. This is taken right from their workshop, asking this question. Listen to the question. Is information immortal? What unexplored realms of spirit will we encounter with amazing new forms of computer and electronic hypermedia? New myths will be needed. New mysteries will be encountered. How can ancient models of mind, such as shamanism, Hinduism, or voodoo, help us comprehend silicon-based consciousness? Why are neuroenhancers crucial tools for so many computer innovators? Can humans share an erotic relationship with a machine being? Are Earth spirits at play in fields of photons and electronic spin? A neo-psychedelic subculture is co-evolving with new technologies to reveal glimpses of exotic futures. Hi. I mean, this is like mid-1990s, and they were already unpacking at that point in the workshops at Esalen. What does technology and spirituality look like? What does psychedelics look like? How does all of this coalesce? A new form of spirituality and a new form of technology, bringing them all together to create a new form of man. Really interesting. This stuff, Mike, we look at transhumanism as being a modern day, in the now development. But the one thing I do in Game of Gods is I unpack it. I have a chapter. It's probably the most in-depth chapter of the history of transhumanism you will find anywhere. And I'm saying that because I've done the homework on it. I understand it. The idea has been around with us for a long time. I mean, from the 60s, the 50s, going all the way back to the 1880s, there has always been this hope as mankind has built new machines and built new technologies that this could somehow be our new alchemy, our new way of becoming more than what we are. It's Genesis chapter 3. That's really what this is, Mike. It's just man saying, by transgressing, we will transform, and we're going to do it this time through our machinery.
Well, Carl, now we've done it again. You and I have done it, and you and I are, we're on the same page here. But there's a lot of people watching this. Remember, this is a very hardcore Christian audience that watches our show, and I think sometimes all of us that are kind of leaders in this field, Steve Quayle, myself, Tom Horn, you. The list goes on and on and on of people that are out there talking right now, but we frighten the flock. What can you say to the flock to sort of, what do they do to protect themselves, to not have to be afraid of what's going on?
Right, and that's a great question. I think it boils down to recognizing first what this is. And really, when we do that, there is nothing to be afraid of. To be concerned about? Absolutely. To be afraid of? No. Definite concern, though. What it boils down to is this, Mike. It is an alternative redemption message, an alternative salvation narrative. If we have that in our heads, then we already have a foundation to begin to wrestle with this. And this takes me back many years ago, back in 2013. I spoke at the Mormon Transhumanist Association, okay? Some of the guys there, I count them as friends. We had some great conversations, and they treated me really well when I was there. They brought me in as a critic of religious transhumanism. And the essence of my message to them was the cross in Luke 23. In the book of Luke, chapter 23, we see Jesus on the cross between two thieves. And the one thief is calling down on Jesus, and the other thief is saying to the first thief, hey, don't you have any fear of God? This is an innocent man. And then the thief and Jesus, the second thief and Jesus, talk to one another. And there's a promise to remember me today in paradise. And what struck me, Mike, as I was going through what I would say to the Mormon Transhumanist group is, what did Jesus not say to them? He didn't say, hey, you better find a technological solution to your problem of death. He didn't say, go do good works. Go find some technique of good works to save you. He didn't say, go join the priesthood. Go find spiritual technique through ritual and obligation. He didn't say any of that because there was nothing practical the thief could do. The only thing the thief could do was positional, trust in the one dying beside him, period. And I think it's so important as Christians not to get caught up, let's say, in all of the big questions of what the new technologies look like, not to get wrapped up in all the gadgets and the gizmos or to be afraid of certain technologies. I mean, the technologies are coming. We deal with it. And some of it you don't want in your household. I'm not really big on having Google listening to me. No, thank you. So, yeah, stay away from certain things. But let's keep in mind what this really is. This is just an alternative redemption story. And while this crops up, let's then use this as opportunity to be ambassadors for Christ and say, hey, this is a really interesting road you're traveling. Now let's talk about what Jesus himself did, and take a look at the thief on the cross as an example.
Amen.
Use this as opportunity, not as a fear issue.
Amen. Amen. Well said. And I think what we're trying to convey to you folks is when it comes for your love of Jesus, there's no app for that. I mean, that is something you have to do on your own. It's your own search. But you don't need to be afraid. The Bible clearly tells us that if we trust in Jesus, that we don't need to fear. And in the 23rd Psalm, it doesn't say, it says, that basically you shall fear nothing. It doesn't say you get to pick and choose what you fear. So Interesting discussion today, Carl. Carl, so the book, Game of Gods, again, right here. Now, it's done, it's out. Are you going to, next time, there it is, folks, next time. Okay. Could you next time, like, put together an actual book and not like, something, but anyway, what are you doing now?
Yeah.
Where do you go from Game of Gods?
That's a great question. I mean, Game of Gods is really the culmination of 25 plus years of research. And you're right, it's not a pamphlet, is it?
No,
It's not a pamphlet.
it's not.
Yeah, it's a
It's a
pretty
book.
big book. Yeah, it really is. And right now, I mean, literally today, before we were recording this, I was working through the electronic version of it, reformatting oodles and oodles of footnotes and block quotes to make it work in a Kindle. But the next stage, I don't know. I haven't shared this. I haven't shared this on air with anybody, so I'm going to tell you. Why not? You're the only one that's asked the question so far. I think I might tackle a book on interfaithism, on the idea of all religions merging and coming together, because that is spiritual technique.
Well,
That's
would
what
be
that is.
that would be
Yeah.
that would be
And see, here's the
interesting.
thing, Mike. I mean, the book pulls a lot of things together. It pulls the transhumanist side together. It pulls global governance and world government. It pulls together the interfaith side as a spiritual form of spiritual politics. It pulls together culture as a transformative element. It pulls all this together. And I'm going to probably I'm thinking I'm going to pull out the section on interfaithism, expand that, because that's so relevant as well. All of this, Mike, all of this is just man searching for a technique to save himself, to build
Amen.
heaven on earth, to be
Amen.
our own masters, and we're not. We are not.
Well, Carl, thank you for joining us today, and congratulations. I understand it's been about a year that you've had your new building there with your beautiful library in the background. So just thrilled with what's happening to you and all your research. We're looking forward to hearing more from you. So thank you and God bless you for joining us today.
Hey, thanks, Mike. This was a real pleasure. I'm looking forward to talking again.
Oh, awesome. Well, folks, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Watchman's Report. Don't forget, hearthewatchman.com. Get over there, take a look, get that DVD set or the on-demand of the Spiritual Warfare Training Workshop that's coming up at the end of this month. Go, Carl TEICHRIB, and again, his last name is TEICHRIB, is on Facebook. Go there. He posts some amazing pictures there, things like that. Go there, follow him. We'll see you next time. Please don't forget, there is absolutely nothing that you can't do with Jesus in your heart, but nothing at all. Get out there, get busy. Join Carl over at Burning Man. We'll talk to you all soon.